On the afternoon of my daughter's wedding, her overly confident fiancé decided it would be amusing to introduce me to his supervisor as if I were a washed-up nobody without a job. The moment he said it out loud, the chatter at the table dropped away, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the dining room. That silence shattered when his boss broke into a smile, clapped a hand on my shoulder, and said warmly, "It is good to see you again, partner." Then, without hesitation, he turned to the groom and added in a cold, even tone, "You are terminated." The young man froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Shock had wiped his expression completely blank. A server guided us toward a quieter table, near the windows at Harborstone Bistro, overlooking the water. I watched Mark Ellison straighten his tie carefully before taking his seat across from me. My daughter, Emily, glowed beside him, her engagement ring throwing soft flashes of light under the restaurant's warm fixtures. "So, Mr. Carter," Mark began, launching straight into conversation before anyone had even poured water, "Emily mentioned that you are between opportunities at the moment." I blinked once. Between opportunities. The phrase lingered between us, polished and artificial, like an expensive scent sprayed too heavily. "I am retired," I replied evenly, spreading my napkin across my lap. Mark's smile stretched wider, though it stopped short of his eyes. "Of course. Right. Well, I work for Nexacore Systems. We are a leading artificial intelligence firm here in the central United States. I manage corporate sales at a senior level." "That sounds impressive," I said calmly. "How long have you been with the company?" "Just over 3 years," he replied, leaning back in his chair. "During that time, I boosted my division's revenue by 40%. He paused, clearly waiting for praise. "And what line of work were you in, Mr. Carter?" he asked. "Nothing remarkable," I answered. "Just business." Emily rested her hand lightly on his forearm. "Dad tends to downplay things. He always does that." Mark nodded, as if he had decoded a secret. "I see. Well, the important thing is staying active at your stage of life, right? Keeping your health up. Finding things to occupy your time." My grip tightened around the water glass without me meaning to. "At your stage of life." The condescension dripped from every syllable. "I stay occupied," I said quietly. The server returned, ready to take our orders. Mark selected the grilled sea bass with saffron rice. Emily ordered the lemon-roasted chicken. I skimmed the menu briefly. "I will have the soup and sandwich combination," I said. Mark's eyebrows lifted just slightly. "The soup special? Are you sure, sir? Today is a celebration." Emily flushed. "Mark, that is fine. Dad prefers simple meals." "Well, sure," Mark said with a dismissive wave. "Everyone has different priorities and different budgets. I get it." The word budgets struck harder than he realized. This 30-something sales manager believed he understood my finances based on a lunch order. I shifted the conversation deliberately. "Tell me more about Nexacore. What exactly do you work on?" His posture straightened immediately. "Advanced systems, machine learning frameworks that increase corporate efficiency, predictive modeling, automated decision logic. We are fundamentally changing how modern companies operate." "Interesting," I said. "Has the company been around long?" "About 3 decades, Mark replied, "but they only became truly successful in the past 10 years. Before that, they were probably just another small startup. Now the revenue is substantial." He cut into his fish with careful precision. "I'm actually being considered for a promotion. Department director first, and then possibly regional leadership." Emily smiled proudly. "Mark works incredibly hard. 60-hour weeks are not unusual." 60 hours? I raised an eyebrow. "That is commitment. Achievement requires sacrifice, Mark said firmly. My generation understands that. The corporate world moves faster now. Either you adapt or you fall behind. I tasted the soup, a rich roasted tomato blend, surprisingly well done. Change is rarely easy, I said. Exactly, he replied, pointing slightly with his fork. That is why I keep myself educated. Conferences, industry briefings, constant networking. Coasting through life does not work anymore. Some people get stuck. Emily shifted in her chair. Mark just means things are different now than when Dad started out. Evolution, I said, nodding. Survival depends on adaptability. He smiled, missing the sharpness beneath my words. That is exactly it. Nexicor rewards innovation and measurable results. Outdated thinking has no place anymore. We need aggressive strategies and new blood. And you deliver that? I asked. My performance speaks for itself, he said confidently. You do not achieve 40% growth by accident. He leaned closer, lowering his voice slightly. Honestly, some of the older staff there cannot keep up. They are dragging the company down. Dead weight, if we are being honest. Dead weight, I repeated, committing the phrase to memory. They must have valuable experience, I said mildly. Mark shrugged. Experience without progress is just stagnation. The company would be better off replacing half of them with motivated young professionals. Emily let out a nervous laugh. Mark is just very passionate about efficiency. Passion drives success, he said, clearly enjoying the sound of his own certainty. That is what separates people who win from... Ryan trailed off and flicked his eyes toward my soup bowl. From people who are willing to accept less. The insult lingered in the space between us, thick and deliberate. People who accept less. People like me, in his mind. The jobless older man ordering soup, while his daughter's accomplished fiancé enjoyed a carefully plated entree. I placed my spoon down slowly. The soft metal struck the bowl with a sharper sound than I expected. Accepting less can be intentional, I said evenly. Ryan did not hear the caution in my voice. He was far too focused on what he believed was his triumph over the unimpressive man seated across from him. He dabbed his mouth with his napkin, visibly energized, as if he had just won an argument that only existed in his own head. His meal was not even halfway finished, yet he had already shifted fully into lecture mode. You know, Mr. Carter, he said with forced warmth, I respect that you are trying to stay upbeat about your circumstances. His tone was the same one people use when speaking to children or the very old. But have you ever thought about consulting? With whatever experience you have, there might be something out there. Experience is an interesting thing, I replied carefully. Sometimes it teaches you when to listen instead of speak. But you cannot just observe forever, Ryan pressed, his enthusiasm edging into aggression. You have to act, set plans. Look at me. I will be department director within a year, regional leadership within 3. You have to define milestones. Emily nodded along, eager to support him. Ryan is extremely focused on goals. Goals matter, I said, although the most important ones are not always visible to people on the outside. Ryan completely missed what I meant. Exactly. That is why you need to get out there, meet people, let them know you are available. I could even introduce you to some contacts, maybe something entry-level, low pressure. Entry-level, for me. The irony was almost impressive. That is very kind of you, I replied. It is about giving back, he continued, clearly pleased with himself. Helping people who are not as fortunate. That is part of being successful. Emily smiled brightly. See, Dad, Ryan really cares about people. Oh, that much is obvious, I said, taking a measured sip of water. Your empathy is unmistakable. Ryan straightened slightly, mistaking my words for admiration. Money is not the point for me, Mr. Carter. I mean, the six-figure income is nice, but what really matters is building something meaningful. He said 6 figures as though it were a public service announcement. Something meaningful, I repeated, like the company itself was originally built. Well, that was different, Ryan replied casually. The founders were mostly lucky. Right timing, early entry. The real progress is happening now with people like me pushing things forward. Lucky. Decades of relentless work, missed holidays, constant financial risk, dismissed as coincidence. The founders were lucky, I said slowly. They had to be, he insisted. Artificial intelligence barely existed back then. They probably just stumbled into success. He laughed, the sound scraping against my nerves. Now we are the ones doing the serious work, he continued, turning their accidental success into something professional. Emily sensed tension, but misunderstood its source. Dad, Ryan is only trying to help. He knows how hard the job market can be for people who are starting over. Starting over, as if my entire career had simply vanished. Starting over can be freeing, I said carefully. It forces you to reevaluate what truly matters. Yes, Ryan jumped on that immediately. That mindset is essential. Fresh beginnings, new paths. You just have to be realistic about your limitations. My limitations. And what limitations would those be? I asked quietly. He gestured vaguely with his fork. Age, for one. Technology evolves fast. Older workers struggle to keep up, and companies want people who can grow with them long-term. Long-term growth, I repeated thoughtfully. Like 30 years. Exactly, he said, pleased. You see, though realistically, starting at your stage of life, you are probably looking at 5, maybe 10 years at most before full retirement. Businesses invest in futures, not... He stopped himself. Not what? I asked. Not short-term situations. He finished awkwardly. Emily reached for my hand across the table. Dad, maybe we should change the subject. But Ryan was fully committed now, his voice gaining momentum. The truth is, Mr. Carter, modern business rewards ambition. Showing up is not enough anymore. You need vision, innovation, the courage to disrupt outdated systems. Disrupt systems, I echoed. Exactly. That is what I am doing at Nexacore. The old guard there relies on obsolete methods. They think longevity equals wisdom, but markets shift. Customers change. Sometimes you have to tear everything down to build something better. Tear down what had been built by people he called lucky. I folded my napkin carefully and placed it on the table. The movement was subtle, but something about it made him stop mid-sentence. Excuse me, I said as I stood. I need a moment of fresh air. Dad? Emily asked, concern clear in her voice. Are you all right? I am just tired, I said calmly, removing my wallet. I placed $40 on the table, enough to cover my meal and the gratuity. This will cover my share. Ryan's eyes flicked to the bills on the table, widening just slightly. Mr. Carter, that really is not necessary. I insist, I said, adjusting my jacket as I stood. Thank you for dinner, and for the career guidance. Emily pushed her chair back halfway, panic creeping into her voice. Dad, please do not go. Ryan did not mean... Ryan meant exactly what he said, I replied, meeting her fiancé's gaze without flinching, and I heard every word. The drive from downtown to my home outside the city gave me nearly an hour alone with my thoughts. Each mile carried another echo of his voice. Lucky founders, dead weight, starting over at your age. By the time I turned onto my street, The heat of my anger had cooled into something far more focused, calm, deliberate, purposeful. I parked, unlocked the front door, and went straight to my study. That room was the one place in the house where I allowed the full truth of my life to exist. It was arranged carefully, not for visitors, but for memory. The walls were lined with framed photographs and honors I never displayed elsewhere. Incorporation documents for Nexacore Systems from the mid-1990s, signed by Walter Klein and me. Pictures from our first product launch, the two of us standing in front of a folding table with outdated laptops and borrowed equipment. Industry awards spanning 3 decades. A business magazine feature from several years back that referred to me as a quiet force behind modern artificial intelligence. I lowered myself into the leather chair behind my desk and stared at the photograph resting there. Walter and I, shoulder to shoulder in a cramped garage, barely 30 years old, and completely convinced we were going to change the world. And we had. I picked up my phone and dialed Walter's number. He answered on the second ring, just as he always did. "So," he said cheerfully, "how was dinner with the future son-in-law?" "Informative," I replied carefully. "How are things going at the company?" Walter chuckled. "About what you would expect when you are not around. A little chaos, a little confusion." Then his tone softened. "All jokes aside, everything is running well. Quarterly numbers are strong. When are you ending this retirement experiment and coming back?" "I am still enjoying the pause," I said. "Any new developments I should know about?" "Well," he said, "there is one thing. Ryan Ellison over in sales has been pushing hard for more responsibility. Ambitious kid, I will give him that." My grip tightened slightly around the phone. "Ryan Ellison? You know him," Walter continued. "Senior sales manager, 3 years with us. Sharp ideas, but he has that look in his eye, always talking about modernizing operations and disrupting outdated paradigms." The same phrase, word for word. "What kind of changes is he suggesting?" I asked. "Typical young executive enthusiasm," Walter said. "Restructuring teams, replacing so-called legacy thinkers with fresh talent. Yesterday he actually suggested we might be carrying too much senior dead weight." Dead weight. Again. "That is an interesting way to frame experience," I said evenly. Walter sighed. "Between us, I think he imagines himself running this place someday. I cannot tell whether that is healthy ambition or unchecked arrogance." I looked down at the photograph from the garage. "Sometimes it is both." "True," Walter agreed. "His sales numbers are strong, and the board likes him. That buys a lot of tolerance. Still, I miss having someone here who remembers why we built this company in the first place." "I remember exactly," I said quietly. "That is why I am staying away for now." After we ended the call, I opened my laptop and pulled up Nexacore's most recent financials. 3 decades of steady growth, careful expansion, long-term thinking, annual revenue approaching $200 million, hundreds of employees across multiple states, all of it dismissed by Ryan as luck. I leaned back and smiled for the first time that evening. He wanted to disrupt systems. He wanted to eliminate what he called dead weight. Fine. I would let him try. The wedding was set for mid-June. 4 months. 4 months for Ryan to continue believing he had measured me correctly. 4 months to watch him reveal himself fully. To Emily, to the family, to anyone paying attention. 4 months to prepare a lesson he would never forget. I pulled a legal pad from my desk drawer and began writing. His comments about the founders, his contempt for experienced employees, his patronizing talk of entry-level work and limitations. Every remark mattered. He believed tearing things down was the path to progress. Excellent. I picked up the old garage photograph once more, studying the younger versions of Walter and myself. We had built Nexacore from nothing, sacrificing comfort, sleep, and certainty for a vision no one else believed in. And we were not finished yet. We had earned every victory the hard way, survived every collapse, and built something that endured long after experts predicted our failure. Ryan believed that experience without change was nothing more than stagnation. Before long, he would see what 3 decades of constant adaptation looked like when it was aimed with precision. I shut my laptop and went upstairs, already mapping out the next phase. There was an image to maintain, a role to play, and a lesson to construct carefully. Ryan liked the idea of successful people helping those beneath them. He was about to receive that experience firsthand. 2 weeks passed after that revealing dinner. I used the time exactly as Ryan would expect someone like me to use it. I read the paper on my front porch each morning. I tended to my small garden in the afternoons. I became the harmless, slightly aimless retiree he believed me to be. So when I heard a car pull into my driveway on a Tuesday afternoon, I was prepared. From the living room window, I watched Ryan step out of his luxury sedan, smoothing the lapels of his tailored suit. Emily practically skipped up the front steps, holding a thick envelope that could only mean one thing. "Dad," she said breathlessly as she came through the door, "we have something exciting to show you." Ryan followed at a slower pace, his eyes already taking inventory of my home with polite disapproval. The furniture was comfortable but modest, the decorations tasteful but ordinary. Exactly the impression I wanted to project. "Mr. Carter," he said, offering a firm but brief handshake, "I hope we are not interrupting your afternoon." Afternoon, as if my days were empty stretches of television and naps. "Not at all," I said with an easy smile. "What brings you two by?" Emily held out the envelope, thick cream paper, embossed lettering, more expensive than anything I would normally buy. "The official wedding invitation," she said proudly. "You are the first person to see it." I opened it slowly, appreciating the heavy cardstock and careful calligraphy. "It is beautiful, sweetheart. June 15th, Lakeside Country Club." "Very refined," I added. "Ryan chose the venue," Emily said. "That is where all the major Nexacore events are held." Ryan straightened slightly. "Setting matters for an occasion like this. My supervisor will be there, along with several board members. I wanted a place that reflects—" His gaze drifted around my living room. "Professional standards." "That sounds impressive," I said, placing the invitation on the coffee table. "I should start thinking about what to wear." This was his opening, and he stepped right into it. "Actually, Mr. Carter, that is something I wanted to discuss," he said, adopting a tone he likely believed conveyed sensitivity. "My supervisor will be attending, Walter Klein. He is extremely influential. You may want to dress, perhaps a bit more formally than usual." Emily shot him a warning look, but he pressed on. "I do have a suit," I replied calmly. "I am sure you do," Ryan said, his eyes moving over my casual clothes. "But Walter expects a certain level of polish from the families of his team. First impressions are critical." Polish. If only he knew that Walter and I had once measured success by whether we managed to shower after 20-hour workdays. "Do not worry," I said with gentle reassurance. "I know how to deal with supervisors." Ryan's expression made it clear he did not believe that for a second. Walter Klein built Nexacore from nothing into a major force. He said, earnestly, "Men like him notice details, how you dress, how you speak, how you carry yourself. built from nothing. That part, at least, was accurate. "Is that so?" I replied neutrally. "It should be interesting to meet him." Something in my tone must have unsettled him, because he leaned forward, suddenly more intense. "I am not trying to be difficult," he said, lowering his voice, "but this wedding affects my professional future as well. Walter's perception of my family connections could influence my career. I need everyone to make the right impression." The right impression. Respectable enough to reflect well on him, but not impressive enough to threaten him. And what kind of impression would that be? I asked. Traditional, conservative, someone who values hard work and understands their place, Ryan said, speaking slowly, as if explaining a basic concept. Walter respects people who earn what they have through effort and merit. I nodded, filing away every word. Earned their place through effort and merit. Like spending 3 decades building a company from nothing, perhaps. The irony would have been amusing if it had not been so revealing. Emily sensed the tension running beneath the conversation. "Dad, maybe we could look at your suit together," she offered gently. "I could help you pick a nice tie." "That is very kind of you," I said, smiling at her. I truly appreciated the way she was trying to smooth the space between her father and her fiancé. "I am sure I can find something suitable." Ryan, however, was not finished refining me. "The key thing is projecting dignity, Mr. Carter," he continued. "Walter has very traditional views on family and personal responsibility. He believes people should present themselves with pride, regardless of their circumstances. Regardless of their circumstances." The words floated between us, polished and polite, sharp underneath. "I understand," I replied calmly. "How a person presents themselves often reflects their character." "Exactly," Ryan said brightly, pleased that his guidance seemed to be landing. "Character matters far more than money to men like Walter. He can recognize genuine quality the moment he walks into a room. Authentic quality. Walter had been recognizing it in others, and in me, for over 30 years. Emily suggested we step outside so she could show Ryan my tomato plants. She led me through the sliding glass door into the backyard, conveniently leaving Ryan inside with the wedding seating charts she had set out on the dining table. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the neat rows of vegetables I had been tending since retirement. I sat down on the wooden bench I had built the previous summer and motioned for Emily to join me. "Dad?" Her voice carried the same tone she used as a teenager when she knew I was withholding something important. "What are you planning?" "Planning?" I said lightly. "I am simply trying to be a gracious future father-in-law." "Please do not," she replied, turning to face me fully. "I have known you my entire life. You are doing something. It involves Ryan, and I need to know what it is." Through the glass door, Ryan was bent over the seating charts, no doubt calculating the best proximity to Walter's table. The irony was almost too perfect. "Sometimes," I said gently, "people need space to reveal who they truly are." Emily frowned. "What does that even mean? Why are you not telling Ryan the truth about Nexacore? Why are you letting him believe you are just some retired man who needs career advice?" There it was. She saw far more than Ryan ever had. "You know about Nexacore?" I asked carefully. "I always have," she said. "Not every detail, but I knew you were not just an employee. You helped build it. The photos in your study, the awards you pretend I never notice, the way Walter speaks about you when he calls." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Why are you misleading the man I am going to marry?" I reached for her hand. The sunlight caught her engagement ring, scattering small flashes of color across the soil. "I am not lying, Emily," I said softly. "I am simply not offering information that was never asked for. That is the same thing." "Is it?" I squeezed her fingers gently. "Has Ryan ever truly asked about my life, about who I am, with genuine interest, not assumptions?" She opened her mouth, then stopped. We both knew the answer. Ryan had drawn his conclusions without curiosity, content to judge based on appearances. "This still feels wrong," she said quietly. "He does not know he is being judged." "Life does not announce its tests," I replied. "People evaluate one another every day based on surface impressions. What matters is how someone behaves when they believe they hold the advantage." Inside, Ryan was now pacing while speaking animatedly on his phone, likely updating someone about Walter's attendance at the wedding. "You saw how he treated me at dinner," I continued. "The patronizing tone, the unsolicited advice, the ease with which he dismissed anyone he considered unsuccessful. Is that truly the man you want to build a life with?" Emily watched him through the glass for a long moment. "He is not always like that," she said finally. "When we are alone, he can be kind." "I do not doubt that," I said. "But character is not revealed when things are easy. It shows when someone believes no one important is watching." "So you are setting up a lesson for him," she said, concern mixed with reluctant curiosity. "What happens at the wedding when he finds out?" I smiled faintly, feeling the steady confidence of a plan unfolding exactly as intended. "He learns that assumptions carry consequences," I said. "That respect is not tied to titles or bank accounts. That decency should never depend on status." "And if he does not learn?" she asked. "If he reacts with anger or humiliation? Then you will know exactly who you are marrying," I said, turning to face my daughter fully. "Emily, I am not trying to undermine your happiness. I am trying to protect it. It is far better to understand someone's true character now than to discover it 5 years into a marriage." Emily lowered her gaze to her hands, slowly rotating the engagement ring around her finger. "So you want me to keep this quiet until the wedding?" "I want you to pay attention," I replied. "Really pay attention. Watch how Ryan treats people he believes are beneath him. Listen to how he talks about Walter, about success, about who deserves respect." I paused before continuing. "Then decide, on your own, what kind of future you want." "And if I decide he is exactly who I believed he was?" she asked. "Then I will dance at your wedding," I said without hesitation, "and welcome him into our family with genuine happiness." I meant it completely. "But make sure you are seeing him clearly," I added softly, "not just seeing what you hope is there." Emily stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. Inside the house, Ryan was finishing his phone call, glancing toward the backyard with faint impatience. "He is going to hate you when he finds out," she said quietly. "Probably," I agreed. "The real question is whether he will hate himself for how he treated me." She studied my face for a long moment, torn between loyalty and doubt. Finally, she nodded. "All right, Dad, I will keep your secret. But promise me this is not about revenge." "I promise," I said gently. "Everything I am doing is because I love you." Ryan stepped up to the sliding door, tapping his watch. "Emily, we should head out. I have a call with the West Coast team in an hour." "Coming," she replied, then turned back to me one last time. "Just be gentle with him, whatever you are planning." I kissed her forehead. The lessons that last are rarely gentle. The months between early spring and mid-June unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. While Ryan continued his patronizing check-ins and Emily honored our agreement to stay silent, I methodically prepared every detail of the most instructive wedding gift of Ryan's young life. 3 days before the ceremony, I stood inside Armando's custom tailoring on Michigan Avenue, studying my reflection in a 3-way mirror. The charcoal gray suit fit flawlessly, elegant, conservative, expensive enough to command respect, restrained enough to avoid suspicion. "The fit is exceptional, Mr. Carter," Armando said, adjusting the shoulders with practiced ease. "This suit conveys authority without advertising its cost." "That is exactly what I want," I replied, noting how the subtle pinstripes caught the light. "It needs to speak without saying anything." Armando smiled knowingly. True elegance whispers. 2 days before the wedding, I stopped by Cartwright and Associates in the Gold Coast. The sales associate laid several options across black velvet. "These Nexacore cufflinks are remarkable," she said, lifting a platinum pair engraved with the company's distinctive diamond-accented emblem. "Custom work, I assume?" "A small commemorative piece," I replied, fastening them at my cuffs. They reflected the showroom lighting just enough, unmistakable to the right eyes. "Excellent choice," she said. "They signal success without excess." The day before the wedding, I met with Jonathan Pierce, my private banker at First National. His corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, the horizon stretching endlessly beyond the glass. "That is a substantial wedding gift," Jonathan said, reviewing the transfer authorization. "Are you certain about this amount?" "It is a meaningful occasion," I replied, signing with deliberate strokes. "My daughter deserves nothing less." $50,000 is generous even for you," he said. "Cash or certified check?" "Certified," I answered. "I want the amount unmistakable." That evening I walked my usual path along the lakefront, the water shimmering under the late sun. Tomorrow's rehearsal dinner would mark the opening of the final act. I imagined Walter's expression when he noticed the Nexacore cufflinks. He had personally approved that design years earlier. Recognition would be instant. Ryan had spent months shaping expectations, preparing his boss to attend the wedding of a driven employee, marrying the daughter of a struggling retiree. Walter would arrive ready with polite conversation, perhaps a few encouraging words about perseverance and dignity. He had no idea what awaited him. Instead, Walter was about to discover his co-founder seated at the family table, wearing their company's insignia and writing wedding checks larger than Ryan's yearly compensation. I stopped near the shoreline and looked out across the water. The lake was perfectly still, its surface smooth as glass. Calm days often came before storms, and storms, when timed correctly, had a way of clearing the air. My phone vibrated with a message from Emily. "Rehearsal dinner tomorrow at 6:00 p.m. Ryan is really excited for you to meet Walter. Still time to change your mind, Dad." I replied, "I am looking forward to it, sweetheart. Everything will unfold exactly as it should." And it would. Ryan was about to receive precisely what he had been demanding all along, an opportunity to reveal his true nature in front of the people who mattered most to him. His values, his priorities, his definition of who deserved respect. The only variable would be how the audience responded. I turned back toward my car, the quiet satisfaction of a plan nearing flawless execution settling in my chest. Tomorrow evening, Ryan would learn that assumptions could be costly. By Sunday, he would understand that respect should never depend on perceived status. Behind me, gentle waves met the shore, steady and relentless, like time itself. The marble floors of the Drake Hotel gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers as I passed through the revolving doors, my reflection multiplying across polished stones and glass. 20 minutes earlier, I had driven in from Evanston with the calm focus of someone setting up a final move on a chessboard. Tomorrow would bring revelation. Tonight offered one last chance to observe. The rehearsal took place in the hotel's small chapel, an intimate room with dark wooden pews and stained glass windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Emily stood near the altar in her rehearsal dress, luminous despite the tension visible in her posture. When she saw me, she offered a tight, nervous smile, the look of someone guarding a very important secret. Ryan emerged from a cluster of his Nexacore colleagues, straightening his tie with that practiced gesture of authority I had come to recognize. When he spotted me, his voice carried across the chapel. "Everyone, I would like you to meet Emily's father." His tone was familiar now, slightly elevated, carefully condescending, amplified by the presence of his professional audience. "This is Porter Carter," he continued. "He is retired and lives modestly in Evanston." Lives modestly. The words hovered in the air, scented and intentional, designed to establish hierarchy for the benefit of those listening. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter," said a woman in an impeccably tailored blazer. "Ryan has mentioned that you are enjoying retirement." "I am," I replied, shaking her hand. "Retirement can be surprisingly educational." Polite smiles followed. Their interest faded almost immediately. In their world, retirees were background figures, pleasant, harmless, irrelevant. "Dad prefers a simple lifestyle," Ryan added, projecting just enough volume for nearby guests to hear. "Nothing wrong with that. Different generations, different expectations." Different expectations. My jaw tightened slightly, the first fracture in my carefully maintained calm. "Ryan," I said quietly, "be cautious with judgments. Tomorrow may bring surprises." He laughed, the sound confident but shallow. "You do not need to lecture me about people, Mr. Carter. Reading character is part of my profession. It is essential in sales." "We will see," I replied. The words fell between us like stones dropped into still water. Something in my tone caused him to hesitate, but retreat was not an option with his colleagues watching. "What I mean," he pressed on, "is that success leaves clues. How someone dresses, where they live, what they drive. Those details reveal priorities and competence." "That is an interesting framework," I said. "It is not theory. It is observation." Ryan insisted. "Take my supervisor, Walter Klein. You can identify his quality from across a room. That is earned respect." Earned respect. Walter would have found that phrasing amusing, considering we had earned our respect side by side, sleeping on office floors, surviving on cheap food, chasing a vision no one else believed in. Emily stepped closer to me, sensing the shift. "Maybe we should focus on tomorrow's ceremony." But Ryan had found momentum, encouraged by the attention. "The point is," he continued, "character shows in choices. Walter chose excellence every step of the way. Others—" he gestured vaguely in my direction. "Others choose comfort over achievement." The insult was precise, clean, delivered with surgical care. "You seem very confident in your evaluations," I said, my voice now edged with steel. "Confidence comes from accuracy," Ryan replied. "I have never misjudged someone's potential." "Never?" "Not once. People reveal themselves quickly if you know what to look for." I rose slowly from the pew, the weight of 4 months of restraint settling into something hard and immovable. Conversations around us stalled. The chapel grew quiet as guests sensed confrontation approaching. "Ryan," I said evenly, "you are absolutely correct about one thing." I finished buttoning my jacket with deliberate calm. "Character absolutely reveals itself through choices," I said evenly, "and tomorrow you will have several chances to show yours." Ryan's confidence wavered, just for a moment. What exactly is that supposed to mean? It means, I replied as I walked toward the chapel doors, that assumptions can be costly, especially when they are made in front of people whose opinions truly matter. I do not appreciate that tone, Mr. Carter. Good night, Ryan. I paused at the doorway and turned back toward the gathered guests. Enjoy the rehearsal. Tomorrow should be unforgettable. Emily hurried after me. Dad, wait. I will see you tomorrow, sweetheart, I said gently. Everything will unfold exactly as it should. I crossed the hotel lobby at an unhurried pace, returned the doorman's respectful nod, and stepped into the cool evening air. Behind me, Ryan's voice rose again, confident and animated, no doubt reframing my exit for his colleagues as the wounded pride of an insecure old man. He was welcome to his version of events. By morning, those same colleagues would witness the most instructive moment of Ryan Ellison's professional life. My car waited at the circular drive. As I slid into the driver's seat, I glanced back through the hotel windows. I could see the chapel clearly, Ryan gesturing with authority, Emily watching the door I had just passed through, the wedding party returning to their positions. Tomorrow would bring balance. Tonight offered the quiet satisfaction of a plan nearing completion. The drive back to Evanston gave me half an hour to let the sharp edge of confrontation settle into something steadier. By the time I turned into my driveway, Ryan's latest remarks had solidified my resolve. What would happen tomorrow was not vindictive. It was necessary. I sat in the darkened car for a moment, looking at my modest home. 4 months earlier, Ryan had dismissed it as proof of my failure. Tomorrow he would learn that success was not always measured in square footage or brand names. Inside, I went straight to my study and opened my laptop. An email from Walter was waiting. Looking forward to meeting your future son-in-law tomorrow. He sounds like a very ambitious young man. Ambitious was certainly one word for it. I replied, tomorrow you will meet someone quite interesting at the wedding. His response came quickly. Who would that be? My future son-in-law, I wrote. I think you will find there is much to discuss regarding character and professional growth. Interesting, he replied. Should I prepare for anything in particular? Just be yourself, old friend, I answered. Your perspective will be more than sufficient. I closed the laptop and went to my bedroom. Tomorrow's suit hung nightly pressed on the closet door. The charcoal fabric was dignified and restrained, exactly the image I intended to project until the precise moment of recognition. The Nexicor cuff links rested in their velvet case on the dresser, waiting to catch Walter's eye at exactly the right time. From my desk drawer, I retrieved the certified check I had picked up earlier that day. $50,000 made out to Emily and Ryan Ellison. The amount was intentional, substantial enough to signal undeniable wealth, large enough to shatter Ryan's assumptions about my supposed circumstances. I thought again of the rehearsal, of Ryan's absolute certainty that he had never misjudged anyone's abilities. The arrogance had been astonishing and perfect. Tomorrow's reckoning would be complete precisely because his confidence was so unshakable. My phone vibrated with a message from Emily. Dad, are you okay? Ryan feels bad about tonight. I typed back. Ryan feels exactly what he should feel. Tomorrow will bring clarity for everyone. I am worried about what you are planning. Do not be, sweetheart, I replied. Justice is rarely as harsh as people imagine. She did not respond. I knew she was torn, caught between the urge to warn Ryan and the deeper understanding that some truths could only be learned firsthand. I stepped to the study window and looked out at the quiet street. My neighbors were settling in for the evening, reading, watching television, living the simple retired lives Ryan believed defined me. None of them knew that tomorrow would deliver the most satisfying moment of my professional life. Walter's confusion would be genuine when he noticed the Nexacore cufflinks, when Ryan introduced me as Emily's struggling, unemployed father, when recognition finally dawned. That expression alone would be worth 30 years of partnership. I reviewed Ryan's behavior one last time, replaying each moment with clinical clarity. The patronizing tone at the restaurant, the unsolicited career guidance, his casual dismissal of experienced employees as dead weight. The lecture the night before about character revealing itself through personal choices. Every slight had been noted, every assumption recorded. He was right about one thing. Character does show itself through choices, and his choices had revealed far more than he realized. I prepared for bed with the steady calm of a surgeon before a demanding procedure. Every element was in place: the suit, the cufflinks, the certified check, the setting, filled with Ryan's supervisor and professional peers as witnesses. Emily knew enough to step aside when the moment arrived. As I switched off the bedside lamp, a deep satisfaction settled over me. The plan was no longer forming. It was complete. Ryan had spent months revealing his values, his priorities, his personal definition of worth. By the following day, he would learn that assumptions about success could be painfully expensive, especially when made in front of those who actually controlled his future. Sleep came easily, heavy and untroubled, filled with the quiet certainty of justice approaching. The morning of June 15th arrived clear and bright, Chicago's skyline sharp against a flawless sky. Perfect wedding weather. I dressed slowly and deliberately, like an actor preparing for a defining performance. When I fastened the Nexacore cufflinks, I paused for a moment. Today, these small platinum symbols would speak far louder than words ever could. The Drake Hotel buzzed with energy when I arrived just after noon. Staff moved briskly through the corridors. Guests gathered in small clusters, dressed in formal attire and anticipation. Emily was upstairs in the bridal suite, likely channeling her nerves into last-minute adjustments. I made my way to the chapel as guests began taking their seats. Walter stood near the front, distinguished in a tailored navy suit, observing the room with the polite curiosity of a man meeting an employee's extended family for the first time. When his eyes met mine, he nodded courteously. To him, I was simply another guest, another stranger. Ryan emerged from a side room moments later, immaculate in his formal wear, confidence radiating from him like a well-practiced aura. He scanned the chapel carefully, no doubt ensuring that Walter had an unobstructed view of the ceremony. When Ryan noticed me, I caught a brief flicker of uncertainty, the echo of last night's exchange still lingering. "Mr. Carter," he said with forced cheerfulness, stepping toward me, "I am glad you decided to attend after our discussion." "I would not miss this," I replied evenly. "Today will be memorable." His smile tightened slightly, but he quickly redirected his focus. His colleagues from Nexacore had taken seats in the third row, perfectly positioned to witness everything that followed. The music began. I moved to my place near the entrance as the chapel doors opened. Emily appeared at the top of the aisle, radiant in her grandmother's restored wedding dress. Her face glowed with a mixture of joy and nerves. She slipped her arm through mine, and for a brief moment, strategy and consequence faded into something far simpler. "You look beautiful," I whispered as we began our walk. "Thank you, Dad," she replied softly, "for everything." We proceeded down the aisle at a measured pace, guests rising in unison. Ryan waited at the altar, his eyes fixed on Emily with genuine affection, a reminder of why she loved him. Walter watched attentively from the front row, likely calculating how engaged he should appear at his employee's wedding. When we reached the altar, the officiant raised his hands. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" "I do," I said clearly, my voice steady and carrying throughout the chapel. "Her father, with deep love and hope for her happiness." Emily squeezed my hand before letting go. I placed her hand into Ryan's. For a brief moment, the three of us stood together as the chapel held its breath. "Be happy," I whispered to her, kissing her cheek before stepping away to take my seat in the front row. The ceremony unfolded with traditional grace. Emily and Ryan exchanged vows with genuine emotion, their sincerity unmistakable. Despite everything, I found myself moved by their promises, even as I waited for the lesson yet to come. Walter sat 2 seats away, occasionally glancing toward me with mild curiosity. Soon that curiosity would become something else entirely. When the officiant pronounced them married, Ryan kissed Emily with the confidence of a man certain his future was secure. Applause filled the chapel as celebratory music rang out. As the recessional began, I noticed Ryan scanning the room once more, his gaze landing on Walter with clear satisfaction. He believed he had navigated everything flawlessly, marrying the woman he loved in front of his professional mentor without incident. The receiving line formed in the chapel vestibule. Guests offered congratulations as Emily and Ryan glowed with newlywed happiness. I took my place as father of the bride, accepting kind words and compliments on the ceremony. Ryan was fully in his element now, proudly introducing his wife to his colleagues, completely unaware that the most important introduction of the day had not yet occurred. "My wife," Ryan kept saying, savoring the words as if repeating them made them more powerful. His confidence had fully returned, the tension from the night before washed away by the glow of a flawless ceremony. Through the crowd, I noticed Walter moving toward the receiving line, likely preparing to offer polite congratulations to his employee's new family. The moment I had spent 4 months preparing was finally within reach. Ryan noticed Walter's approach and straightened instinctively, the ambitious subordinate shifting into performance mode. The hotel's grand ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, transformed into an elegant reception space during the brief window between ceremony and celebration. Guests mingled with champagne flutes in hand, soft jazz from a string quartet floating through the room. I positioned myself near the bar, watching Ryan work the crowd with rehearsed charm. Walter stood near the tall windows overlooking Lake Michigan, his familiar silhouette outlined by the afternoon light. He had attended the ceremony with polite interest, no doubt calculating the appropriate level of engagement with his employees' in-laws. Very soon, that calculation would no longer matter. Ryan approached him with practiced confidence, Emily's hand tucked proudly through his arm. This was his showcase moment, introducing his beautiful new wife to the man who held influence over his career while quietly demonstrating his own social standing. "Mr. Klein," Ryan said, his voice cutting cleanly through the reception's hum, "I would like you to meet my wife, Emily, and her father." I stepped forward at precisely the right moment. Months of patience were about to yield results. Walter turned with courteous interest and took Emily's hand. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "Ryan speaks of you often." "Thank you," Emily replied. "He admires you a great deal." Ryan's chest swelled visibly. Then with casual dismissal, he gestured toward me. "And this is my father-in-law, Porter Carter," he said. His tone shifted, subtly but unmistakably. He is retired, lives modestly in Evanston. The words settled into the air, deliberate and performative. A few of Ryan's colleagues drifted closer, drawn by curiosity and the promise of hierarchy being reinforced. Walter turned toward me. For the first time that day, his composure faltered. His eyes moved from my face directly to my cufflinks, catching the Nexicor insignia as it reflected the chandelier light, platinum, understated, unmistakable. "Porter," he said slowly. "Porter Carter." Ryan blinked. Once, then again. "You know him?" he asked. "Know him?" Walter's voice rose just enough to turn nearby heads. "Porter, what on earth are you doing here?" "I am attending my daughter's wedding," I replied calmly, extending my hand. "Good to see you, Walter. You look well." Ryan's expression shifted rapidly, confusion giving way to suspicion, then to something dangerously close to panic. "Mr. Klein," he said quickly, "there must be some misunderstanding. This is just Emily's father. He is unemployed." Walter stared at him as if he had just said something profoundly foolish. "Unemployed?" Walter repeated. "Ryan, this is Porter Carter, co-founder of Nexicor Systems, my business partner for 30 years. The words struck Ryan like a physical blow. I watched the color drain from his face, his mouth opening without producing sound. Around us, conversations stopped completely, as guests sensed that something far more compelling than small talk was unfolding. "Partner?" Ryan managed weakly. "That is not possible. He is just what?" Walter's tone hardened. "Just the man who helped build this company from nothing. Just the architect behind half of our core technology. Just my closest colleague and friend." Ryan turned toward me, his face pale beneath his wedding glow. You really are co-founder and primary shareholder of Nexicor Systems," I said quietly. "The company where you have spent the last 3 years explaining to me how business works." Emily stepped closer to Ryan, her expression a blend of concern and quiet resolve. She had known this moment was coming, but even she had not been able to anticipate the magnitude of his public unraveling. Walter's executive instincts took over, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. "Ryan," he said evenly, "I would like you to explain exactly what you have been saying to my business partner." Ryan's mouth opened and closed without sound, his carefully polished wedding day confidence dissolving as if it had been made of paper left out in the rain. The colleagues who had admired his networking skills only minutes earlier were now witnessing the most dramatic professional collapse Nexicor had seen in its 30-year history. "I did not know," Ryan finally whispered. "He never told me." Walter's expression made it immediately clear that this explanation carried no weight at all. In less than half a minute, Ryan's complexion had shifted from celebratory glow to the pale gray of a hospital corridor. Around us, the reception had transformed from elegant celebration into a live spectacle. Guests subtly formed a loose circle, drawn in by a scene far more gripping than champagne and small talk. "Mr. Klein, please," Ryan said again, desperation leaking into every word. I truly did not know. He never said he worked at Nexicor. "Worked at," Walter repeated softly, his calm suddenly dangerous. "Ryan, Porter does not work at Nexicor. Porter is Nexicor. Half of our foundational patents carry his signature." The words landed one after another, each blow heavier than the last. I could see Ryan's mind racing, replaying months of arrogance with horrifying clarity. The smug advice, the dismissive jokes, the patronizing tone, every moment now sharpened into regret. "I can explain," Ryan said, his voice cracking as he turned from Walter to me and back again. "There has been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," Walter replied, his voice now edged with steel, "is how my senior sales manager managed to treat my business partner like a charity case for 4 months without realizing the depth of his own ignorance." Emily stepped closer to Ryan, her wedding dress brushing against his arm as she tried to shield him instinctively. "Mr. Klein, he honestly did not know. Dad never mentioned the company." "He should not have needed to," Walter said without looking away from Ryan. "Basic human respect does not depend on job titles or bank balances." Ryan was unraveling now, his hands moving erratically as words spilled out in disorder. "I respect people. I always have. I was only trying to help. I was offering guidance, career advice." "Career advice?" Walter repeated, his tone freezing the air between us. "You offered career advice to the man who created your job." No one nearby pretended to be engaged in other conversations anymore. Ryan's colleagues stood frozen, likely calculating how far away they needed to stand from this disaster. Hotel staff hovered at the edges, unsure whether to intervene or simply bear witness. "Ryan," Walter continued, his voice measured and lethal, "explain to me how respect is demonstrated by calling my business partner unemployed or dead weight." Ryan's eyes widened in raw panic. "I never said that. I would never—" "On Monday morning," Walter cut in smoothly, "you will explain your definition of respect to human resources. You will also begin seeking employment elsewhere." "No," Ryan said, his composure shattering completely. "Please, this is my wedding day. I made a mistake. I can fix this." "The mistake," Walter replied coldly, "was mine. For promoting someone who judges worth by appearances rather than character." Ryan's face had turned ashen, his breathing shallow and rapid. Emily reached for him, but he barely registered her touch. Around us, the reception had become a living lesson in the danger of assumptions. "There has to be something I can do," Ryan pleaded, his voice breaking. "I will apologize publicly. I will accept a demotion. Anything." Walter looked at him the way a man looks at spoiled wine. "You will apologize to Porter. Whether that changes anything is another matter." Ryan snapped his head toward me, hope and terror colliding in his eyes. The man who had lectured me about success now looked as though he might collapse where he stood. "Mr. Porter, please," he said, his voice trembling. "I know I was wrong. I can learn. I can change. Please do not let him destroy my career." The moment stretched between us, sharp and heavy. Ryan stood there with his entire future balanced on my response, desperation written across his face. Emily watched with tears threatening to undo her wedding makeup, torn between the two men she loved most, waiting to see which way the moment would fall. Walter stood silently, his posture calm but charged, the way someone waits when they are fully prepared to end a career without hesitation. Around us, the wedding guests had formed an unspoken amphitheater, champagne flutes abandoned mid-celebration, as they witnessed a moment that would be whispered about at Chicago dinners for years. "Walter," I said softly, my voice carrying clearly through the quiet banquet hall. "Wait." His eyebrows lifted just slightly, but he said nothing. For 30 years he had trusted my judgment, and he did so again now. I turned my attention to Ryan. In that moment, I no longer saw the smug young executive who had spoken down to me for months. I saw a man who had just paid the highest possible price for arrogance. His hands shook faintly as he waited for me to speak. "Ryan," I said evenly, not unkindly, "look at me." He lifted his eyes. What I saw there was not just fear for his job, but real remorse, understanding, the kind that only comes when consequences land fully. "I accept your apology," I said. The relief that washed over his face was immediate and overwhelming. "But," I continued, "my forgiveness comes with one condition." "Anything," he whispered. "Absolutely anything. Never again measure a person's worth by their income, their title, or the clothes they wear." I paused deliberately. Character is not counted in dollars, and respect should never depend on bank balances. Ryan nodded repeatedly, tears pooling as relief mixed with genuine shame. "I understand. I truly do. I learned my lesson." I turned back to Walter, who was watching closely, his expression thoughtful rather than angry now. "Walter," I said, "Ryan made assumptions based on incomplete information. Every one of us has done that at some point in our careers." His jaw tightened slightly. "Are you asking me to ignore 4 months of disrespect toward my business partner?" "I am asking you to consider that sometimes the strongest lessons come from mercy rather than punishment." I rested my hand briefly on Ryan's shoulder. His performance record is strong. His results speak clearly. This experience may make him a better leader, not just a more cautious one. Ryan looked between us, his future clearly no longer in his own hands. Emily stepped closer, her fingers tightening around his arm, offering quiet support. Walter studied Ryan for a long moment, weighing discipline against growth, authority against wisdom. At last, he nodded. "Ryan," Walter said, his voice still authoritative, but no longer cutting. "You will keep your position. However, you're on probation for 6 months. Any sign of the attitudes Porter described, and you are finished. Do you understand?" "Yes," Ryan said hoarsely. "Completely. Thank you. Thank you both." I extended my hand. He took it with a grip that felt like a vow rather than a gesture. "Welcome to the family," I said quietly. "Remember that everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise." "I will," he said without hesitation. "I promise." Emily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around both of us, relief and happiness breaking through the tension at last. Around us, the room slowly exhaled. Conversations resumed. Glasses were lifted again. The crisis softened into resolution. Walter clapped me on the shoulder, his familiar grin returning. 30 years together, and you still managed to surprise me." "Retirement has its benefits," I replied. The string quartet picked up their melody once more. Laughter returned. The wedding continued. And as I watched Ryan move through the crowd afterward, I noticed the change immediately. The sharp edge of superiority was gone, replaced by something quieter, thoughtful, humble. Sometimes, justice delivered with restraint was far sweeter than revenge ever could be.